Mr. Mayor,
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start then. I'm normally the chair of the Finance and Risk Management Committee meeting. And since I'm remote, am I still okay to be able to do that?
Yes.
Okay, great. What we're going to do then is we're going to, again, welcome everybody. Very important meeting today, and appreciate all the other board members being here. And would ask the Kimberly if she could call the roll.
Today we have Megan, and I will go ahead and take roll. Director Parent.
Here.
Hi, Megan.
Director Aguirre. Here. And Chair McCann.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Aguirre, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of course. Hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Now I'll add, are there any items to be added to the agenda or withdrawn?
There are not.
Okay, we'll now move on to the meeting agenda, and we will now look at the approval of the September 14th meeting minutes. And do we have a motion for the regular agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Director Parent, how do you vote?
Aye.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Aye.
Chair McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
And for the record, can we just confirm that there are no public comments on non-agenda items?
Oh, yes.
Right.
There are no public comments on non-agenda items.
Thank you.
Great. What we'll do then is that passes unanimously with no public comments. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next item. And Dr. Washington, if you would like to give the review of the treasurer's report.
yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor McCann, Mr. Chair, and directors for the Finance and Risk Management Committee. I'll be providing a treasurer's report for the period ending August 31st, 2023, 2 months into our fiscal reporting cycle, with the recommendation to receive and file this report by this committee and advancing it to the board of directors for review under the consent. Next slide, please. So again, thank you, directors, for being here. So happy to report out our actual results compared to our budget. I'd like to start with pointing out that our net position for year to date, we landed at $131.2 million, which is slightly under what we budgeted for the period, with the key driver being in the area of our expenses, specifically energy costs, which have essentially increased since June of 2022, July 2023, I'm sorry, through October 2023. So those costs are continuing to be reflective of what's happening in the energy market compared to what we budgeted for at the time we set our budget. We did report $345.3 million in net revenue, which was about 1% over what we budgeted for. But again, those excess revenues were offset by the increased costs of energy. So you'll see in the table in the upper right portion of the slide a comparative analysis of our actual results as it compared to our budget year to date for the period, and then the total expenses landing at our total change in net position year-to-date through August 31st, 2023. The bar chart below the table essentially is a depiction of those results just shown graphically in the bars, with the blue bar or the dark colored bar being the actual year-to-date results, and the yellow bar being the budget comparison. Next slide. This slide compares our actual results compared to our pro forma, which looks for the most part relatively similar to the actual to budget. Keeping in mind that our budget is established based on projections that are reviewed and analyzed at the time we go through our rate setting process and budget adoption process. So you'll see that the results are fairly similar, with being under budget on the net position, that definitely a contribution to our reserves under budget to the tune of 17.7 million. Next slide. So we wanted to incorporate this slide just to give a depiction of the change in energy costs since July of 2023 through October. And as I alluded to earlier, the cost of energy has increased to the tune of about 11% through October compared to what the energy prices were in the month of June. So that's what's one of the primary drivers behind the actual to budget and actual to projections results year-to-date through August 31st, 2023. Next slide. So this slide wanted to present to the committee our contribution to reserves. Again, year-to-date, $131 million were contributed to our reserves as a result of our net position for the period. The bars off to the right of the contributions portion of this slide shows our goal compared to where we, our goal that we're pointing to for the year, where we landed year-to-date, and then compared to where we landed year-to-date based on the budget. The box below the contribution, the lower left-hand portion of this slide, is a reflection of where we are from a liquidity standpoint, indicating that we have a total or had a total liquidity at the time of the report of $439 million, of which $315 million was a cash contribution to that liquidity number, and then what we had available at the time of the report on our revolving line of credit. Through the end of the period, we had total debt outstanding against that line of credit of $21 million. Again, looking at where we landed for the period with respect to our goal, we are 64% toward our goal of 180 days cash. Next slide. This slide, again, it's a month-over-month comparison that's reflective of our reserve build through the fiscal reporting cycle. And as you can see, we've continued to build reserves. We have reached our 90-day cash on hand target that was previously set ahead of schedule. However, we still got some work to do in terms of building reserves to reach our 180 days cash on hand target. Next slide. So these next two slides, or this next slide, just shows where we are with regard to our participation rates through our member agencies. And I'm happy to report that we continue to maintain an overall participation rate of just under 60% of active customers that are continuing to remain enrolled into program. So, Chair, that concludes my presentation for the Treasury report. I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes. Do any of the fellow board members have any questions for Dr. Washington?
Here I do. So you referenced the energy costs being so high. do we have a sense of what? Is it inflation or is it, I don't know.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I would certainly lean to my power services team for a more precise answer on that. But for the most part, the energy costs pretty much follow the natural gas prices, and those have been pretty volatile and continue to increase over time. So that's what's reflective of the 11% increase since June of 2023 through October. And that's influenced by several factors, some being geopolitical to some extent. So
I imagine that was the case, but I just to ask.
thank you for the question.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Member Parent, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, Dr. Washington, great report. And I do think, thank you for building the reserves. That's excellent. We don't know what's going to be happening in the Middle East. Obviously, there is a war going on there. We'll see what happens, but we definitely have to be cautious because I know that many times when things like that happen, energy prices go up. So we just have to be very, very cautious. But I thank you for putting us in a good position with our reserves. With that, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers or public who would like to comment on this item?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, with no public comments then, we're going to go ahead and we've received the treasurer's report, and we'll go ahead and file this report for this period ending August 31st, 2023. And we will move on to item 3 for the fiscal year end 2023 fiscal audit progress report. Another presentation by Dr. Washington. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you again, Mayor McCann. So we'll be reporting the progress of our fiscal year 2023 year-end audit progress. We have joining us virtually for this portion of the presentation one of the members of the audit team from our auditors, Persenti and Brinker. Next slide. So just to remind the committee and the public of the audit timeframe, we presented to the board approval to extend the contract with the auditor to get us through this audit reporting cycle in July. The auditors were engaged and started the audit process in August, and through the month of October, we've made quite a bit of progress toward completing that audit. So the next slide, please. So Persenti and Brinker is our audit firm, and they've been our auditors since 2020. Actually, they completed that first audit report. And they've been really instrumental in terms of reviewing our financials, ensuring that we have the necessary internal controls. The plan would be to go to the board in the month of November with a final draft, if not the final audit report for adoption and acceptance by the board. Next slide, please. So this is just the background on the two key auditors that are handling our account, Brett Bradford, which we are looking forward to welcoming him to the November board meeting. And joining us this evening or this afternoon is Alejandra Schaefer, who serves as a supervisor of our audit team. So combined, the two lead auditors have over 24 years experience in the audit space, and specifically in auditing CCAs, community choice aggregators, similar to those, similar to San Diego Community. Next slide. So our audit is as I mentioned a few moments ago, we've made quite a bit of progress toward the completion of that audit. At the time this slide deck was prepared, we were approximately 80% complete of the audit process, but I'm happy to report we're probably closer to 90% complete now with all of the information that has been requested by the audit team to complete the audit. That information and that data has been provided, And also happy to report that at this far into the audit process, there's been no significant findings, no significant discrepancies, deficiencies, no identified material weaknesses. Controls. Next slide. So again, the audit team, we've worked with them over the years to complete our audit report. And as I mentioned, Alejandra is on the call to answer any questions that that the committee members may have. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Megan, our clerk, do we have any public comments or anybody wanting to speak from the public?
We did not receive any written comments and we have no hands raised.
Okay, I'll now move it over to the board questions and comments. Mayor Gary, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Member Parent?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Again, Dr. Washington, another great job. We really appreciate this report. And so we're going to go ahead then and we received the financial audit progress report. And so we're going to file fiscal year end 2023 financial audit progress report and move to then item number 4. And this will be recommend board approval of the net billing tariff. We could have Colin, if you could go ahead and give us a presentation.
Fortunately, we don't have Colin, but we have myself. I'm Nelson. I am a program
Nelson,
manager.
good to see you. So Nelson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I think this is the first time I present before this committee, so I'm pretty excited. A little nervous, but not too bad. But I'm here to present on the net billing tariff and ask for your recommendation for board approval of the net billing tariff that will be going to the board next week. So we go to the next slide. This is quite a meaty subject. This is something that's been in the works within the organization for quite a while. So there's a couple of or 4 things that I want to talk to you and provide an update about how our net billing tariff is being structured, and then get to the recommendations, which we will go along throughout the presentation. Next slide. So I wanted to start at the basics in terms of what is the net billing tariff. And if we go to the next slide, what net billing tariff is the next evolution in the set of rules that California has established for customers that have on-site generation or who produce their own clean electricity. So NBT, as we call it, it used to be called, or sometimes it's referred to as NEM 3.0. I'm very careful to call it NBT because the net metering structure of NEM kind of goes away in this new tariff. But it replaces net energy metering for how customers are compensated for generating electricity and exporting it out to the electric grid. This is for new customers who interconnected on or after April 15th of this past year, or this year actually. And I think it's important to note that this does not impact our current NEM customers in any way until they complete that 20-year legacy period, which all NEM customers are subject to, at which point they will transition over to NBT. But for the 176,000 plus accounts that we have under NEM, they will not see this impacted. This is only for new customers going forward. Next slide. So as a bit of a history on what net tariff and where it started. So this has been in proceedings for quite a while. Officially, just over 2.5 years that this has been going on. This is what the commission did in their proceeding is they did an evaluation on the NEM program, which they called the look back study. What the study determined is that as it currently stands, the NEM program is not cost effective for the state, and it's leading to higher rates for customers. We're not here necessarily to debate the merits of the look back study that was done during the proceeding and establishment of that study. But what we wanted to show here is that the commission determined that a new tariff was needed. And so they went through an extensive period where they were soliciting ideas from multiple parties, from the solar industry, from advocates, from ratepayer advocates as well, and additionally commissioned the Energy and Environmental Economics Corporation, E3, to draft a white paper on what potential successor tariffs would look like. So after all of that, after years of briefings, proposals, testimony, et cetera, the commission finally adopted the current iteration of the net billing tariff in December of last year. That should say 2023, not 2022. Next slide. So one of the big things around net billing tariff, one of the advantages and why it was designed is that the commission was trying to strike a balance between the cost of the new tariff to all customers and equity, while simultaneously encouraging the growth of distributed energy generation throughout the state. So they designed this tariff in a way that will help promote the adoption of battery storage for new renewable sources. That is one of the things they found lacking as part of the NEM, is that it did not send the proper price signals to customers that reflected the needs of the grid and also encouraged battery storage. So with MBT, they're trying to address that and send the proper signals for grid resiliency as well. Next slide. So where we're at now and what we're recommending as part of this tariff is that the board adopt the net billing tariff and that we use SDG&E's avoided cost calculator rates for going forward. As I mentioned, staff did an in-depth analysis and forecasting to come to these recommendations. So thanks to the help of Lucas and the data analytics and account services team, as well as power services and everyone else involved during this process, we did a pretty in-depth analysis where we forecasted different scenarios for solar growth. We forecasted what we could potentially see in terms of the number of new solar customers coming online, and determined that by adopting the net billing tariff, SDCP as a whole would save about $20 million over 3 years. This savings comes from the way that electricity affects where the grid is compensated at avoided cost calculators, which are rates which are significantly lower than retail rates as they currently stand with NEM. This is exciting for us because these savings can be passed on to our customers through rate stabilization, rate savings potentially through new adders that we will talk about in the next couple of slides, and through other customer programs that encourage the adoption of battery storage. So you can kind of see here on the chart here that we looked at what would it cost if we kept the current NEM program for future customers, or if we adopted MBT, and that is where the savings of 20 million is coming from. Next slide. As I mentioned, as part of that is the recommendation is that we use the avoided cost calculators for SDG&E. So our power services team looked at the documentation that's been published by the CPUC for thoroughness, professionalism, and adequacy, trying to determine if SDG&E's avoided cost calculator rates were sufficient proxy for our own. And what they determined is that it was a sufficient proxy, and it was their recommendation to use their avoided cost calculator rates for us for our MBT tariff going forward. And on here you can kind of see an example of what these rates vary by hour in each month. So there's a lot of information here, and so they also vary based on the climate that the customer is located in. So they did a phenomenal job really digging into this work. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we're thinking about the generation adders. And if we go to the next slide, please. One of the things that staff really wanted to do with this tariff is not just necessarily mimic what the utilities are doing, but really as a organization that is community focused, we wanted to do something for our customers as well. And so in this, one of the things that the PUC did when establishing this net billing tariff is they were aiming for a 9-year payback period. they determined that due to the high rates in our territory, any new project going forward was already achieving that 9-year payback. But it wasn't the case for the other two utilities. They were seeing payback periods that were higher than 9 years. So what they did is they provided adders for customers in PG&E and SCE territory, but not ours. And so we kind of looked at that and said, we can do better, and we should do better and do better by our customers. So if we go to the next slide, what we are proposing as part of this package for the MPT is that we provide an adder, a generation adder for our customers. And in establishing this adder, we had these list of goals that we wanted to accomplish, which is one, to make sure that our tariff was competitive and to really deliver a clear value of why we exist to our customers. We wanted to close that generation bill credit gap and reduce the payback period between low-income customers, care customers, and standard market rate customers. We wanted to ensure simplicity in our adder because the utilities adders are a little complicated and confusing, and also wanted to, as I said, mention, promote equity and support grid reliability. So those were all part of the goals that we try to strike with this adder. So we're proposing that for residential customers enrolled in Care FARA, they get an 11-cent per kilowatt hour adder in addition to the ACC. And for residential non-care customers, that they get an adder of 0.0075 cents per kilowatt hour, so 3/4 of a cent, which is what our board has previously adopted for the net surplus compensation. So we felt that that was an adequate proxy for that as well. Next slide. So our proposal is that this adder be provided for 6 years to all new customers. It would not be applicable to those that transition out of NEM and into MPT. It would only be for new customers. And it'd be provided for the next 3 years for any new customer that interconnects in the next 3 years. So if a customer, as an example, were to interconnect on year 3, they would still get the adder for 6 years. And you can see here that we use the CPUC's own tool and calculator to determine what the payback period would be between customers. And you can see that we were aiming to have equity between customers, and we should expect to see a payback period for our customers of around 6 years, regardless if they're on care or not on care. So that was the intent behind the numbers that we added for the adders. Next slide. Okay, and lastly, the net surplus compensation. So one of the additional changes that was made as part of the net billing tariff under the CPUC was they authorized the utilities to implement an adjustment to the net surplus compensation process that essentially results in the utilities clawing back some money from the payment. And so what we are proposing is that we take a more customer-centric focus, and we view the true-up as really the demarcation, the separation between what are considered billing credits and what are considered payments for surplus energy that was delivered to the grid. And so our proposal is simple, which is to not implement that adjustment and just treat customers, all customers, NEM customers, MPT customers the same. What this does when we look at the estimates for net surplus compensation is that it does cost about $3.2 million over 3 years, but that would be true regardless if they are an NPT or whether they stay on NEM. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't include it in that initial graph that you saw prior. We are also proposing that they follow the same process where if their net surplus compensation is $100 or more, they get an automatic check. And if it's not, they just gets rolled over to the next billing cycle. And with that, that should be my last slide. Go to the next one, please. I just want to talk just quickly that if we go to the next slide, that we have been doing a broad outreach for stakeholder engagement. So we've talked to a lot of agencies, a lot of partners to make sure that what we're proposing makes sense, to make sure that they understand what's happening. And one of the additional things that we wanted to know is that If our board were to adopt this, we will do another round of outreach to inform and educate our stakeholders of the changes that we are proposing to make our program the best in the state. We've looked at other CCAs and what they're proposing, and it's nowhere near ours in terms of being customer-centric and customer-focused and equity-focused. So with that, Mr. Chair, I will turn it over back to you.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Great report. Megan, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments or speakers?
We do not. There was no written comments and there's no hands raised.
Okay, great. Mayor Aguirre, do you have any comments?
No, none of this time.
Okay, Councilmember Parent, do we have any comments from you?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, again, I think this is a great analysis. Again, this is a very complex item. I know people who have solar panels seem to be always curious on how things work and with all the NEM 1, NEM 2 and the future. So we really appreciate your presentation, Nelson, and I think you're gonna probably get more questions in the future on this. But with that, we'll go ahead and do we have a motion for a recommendation for the board approval of the net billing tariff?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, go ahead and do the vote.
I'll do a roll call vote. Director Parent, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Director Aguirre, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair McCann, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
So item carries unanimously. Now we will move on to item 5, update on existing net energy metering policy. And is Lucas here?
That's fair. I'm here. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Lucas. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, board committee directors. My name is Lucas Buto. I'm the Director of Data Analytics and Account Services. So whereas Nelson has given you a very good overview of net billing tariff for customers on a go-forward basis, we also took a very close look at our existing net policy for our existing customers on net 1.0 and 2.0. And consistent with always keeping our customers as the cornerstone of what we always do, we have reviewed our existing net policy, and we believe that there can be and there should be enhancements made to better align the our strategic goal of essentially sourcing local renewable energy. And with that, we are actually going to be taking to the board a recommendation for the board to adopt recalibration / enhancement of our existing net policy that does two things. One, it removes the net surplus compensation cap of $2,500 per account. We believe, and again, we've heard from our customers throughout the 2 years that we've been serving them that cap is it's not a feature that they like because obviously we've gotten the benefit of the renewable energy from them. And so, staff has heard and the leadership team within SDCP has heard that concern, and we will look to address it by recommending the removal of the cap. For additional context, SDG&E does not currently have a net surplus compensation cap at all. And when we set this cap in 2020, it was a function of our organization being young, not having adequate reserves, etc. But we think now that you've heard from our CFO, Dr. Washington, that things are moving along. We're essentially on the trajectory to hit all of our strategic financial reserves. It's the right time for us to readdress the cap and essentially remove it completely. The second enhancement that we will be proposing to the board is the adoption of a NEM generation credit refund. This would actually allow customers not be negatively impacted by our default monthly billing. So unlike SDG&E, we offer two options for existing NEM customers. They can do monthly billing, where they do get a bill every single month, or customers can elect to go annual, which is essentially the billing mechanism offered by SDG&E, where they do get a bill, but there are not any charges associated with it. So customers are not required to pay until a 12-month span concludes. So when we took a look at our customer base, we noticed that a lot of our customers end up being net consumers, meaning their crew charges month over month. And the annual billing process essentially would expose them to a significant bill at the end of the 12th month. And we said, wait, this is not customer centric. Let us give the option of doing monthly, where a customer gets a incremental charge every single month, as opposed to a lump sum significant charge at the end of the 12-month period. And we believe that by adopting a net generation credit refund, customers will not be inconvenienced, in the sense that if they have accrued retail credits at the end of their relevant period, the 12-month period, we would essentially true them up. And if they do have those retail credits, we will essentially put them on their account to be utilized for the next relevant period. And so with that, it actually concludes my presentation for today. Sarah, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
We do not. We did not receive any written comments and there are no hands raised.
Great. Mayor Geary, do you have any comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Parent, do you have any comments or questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Great. Again, I really want to thank Lucas for looking at this. I think removing the cap is a very, very customer-centric item to be able to do that. And I do believe that we are in a better financial position to do that as an organization. With that, do I have a motion to go ahead and recommend to the Board of Directors the item, or actually on this one, we're going to go ahead and receive and then file an update on the existing net energy metering policy. So we don't need a motion. So then we will go ahead and move to the next item. And the first is, do we have any announcements by any of the committee members?
I have one, Chair.
Mayor Geary, the floor is yours.
Today's Director Parent's birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
I have to.
My mom brought cupcakes. Hey, I guess you didn't make it. Sorry, false alarm.
Are we allowed to ask how old?
No, definitely not. Very
I just tell everybody I'm 29, so.
That's right. Older than yesterday.
Well, happy birthday. Well, that's exciting. And we do appreciate you coming and hanging out with us and doing the job. It shows your dedication. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Madam Clerk, or does any of the staff have any additional comments or any items that they would like to talk about for right now?
Don't believe there are none, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. With no additional comments or items, then I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting and just really appreciate staff. They're doing a great job. Thank you, Dr. Washington. Thank you for your finance team. And it was excellent today. I want to thank the board members, and we will adjourn till the next meeting. But I know I'll see all of you at the San Diego Community Power Board meeting coming up soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
We are now adjourned. Take care.